I'm going to show you an absolutely spectacular game played today in the European Team Championships. And it's between Daniel Dubov, the enfant terrible of the Russian chess team, against Rasmus Svane from Germany. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. And now let's crack on with the game. So the Russian team doing very well at the moment, leading in Batumi. And Daniel Dubov is having a very good time for them. He didn't do well in the Isle of Man. He was very disappointed there. But he somehow has sprung to life for the Russian team. Is playing some great chess. So let's see how he gets on. So it's a solid Queen's Gambit declined. And Dubov has played this Bishop F4 variation, which is the trendy way to meet it these days. B6, I rather like this variation. Black might put the bishop on b7, but sometimes you might just play c5 and attack white's centre. Queen c2, that's a little bit unusual. Black can still play c5, but Svane plays bishop a6. And I guess if white wants to calm things down, you could take on d5 or you could play knight e5. But instead, Dubov just goes for it. Castles queenside. It's never been played before. And I have to say, it reminds me rather of one of the Alpha Zero games that I analysed some time ago. I'll put the link to that down there. It is just such a direct way to play. I mean, black could take on c4 with the bishop, but taking with the pawn is okay. And now knight g5. I mean, this is so direct. It's incredible. So the queen and knight line up on h7. Of course, that is not a threat at the moment because the knight covers that square. But that will be white's task, to try and get rid of this knight and checkmate. It's that simple. Of course, if h6, it doesn't solve black's problems because white just plays h4, and after this is taken, then if the knight moves, then we've got queen h7 mate. So yeah, opening up the h file would be absolutely fatal for black. You could play knight d7 here, which would give the knight on f6 some protection. But instead, Svane played the tempting knight c6, threatening to play the knight into b4, attacking the queen, and then perhaps wanting to land on d3. Now that's obviously, that would block out the queen, so Dubov protects that with a3. And now already white is threatening to play d5 here, to get in with the knight, to knock out this one, whoops, knock out that one, and just go for h7 here. So g6 played, which does blunt the queen, of course, on this diagonal, but it gives white something to bite on. h4. And here my computer wants to play knight d5. I'm not convinced that's so good, actually, because it takes the knight away from protecting the king side. I mean, one could simply do this and bishop e2 and keep building on the king side. You know, this piece is still out of play, for example. Svane played bishop d6, and I was really impressed with Dubov's next move because, you know, he's playing in a really blunt way on the king side. But with his next move, he just took a time out. That means that if bishop takes bishop, he can simply recapture with the pawn instead of, well, the g pawn instead of capturing with the e pawn. And that means that this pawn is still well protected. So g3 just played. It also allows the bishop to come out to this diagonal, which could be rather useful, connecting the rooks as well. So queen e7. And now Dubov carries straight on with h5. He's back to playing, route one stuff, going directly for the king, cracking open the rook's file to get Mr. Rook into play. Okay, e5. So Svane continues, well, you could say classically, by meeting a wing attack with an attack in the centre. But actually, White's attack is already way too strong here. And bishop g2 is very simple. It connects the rooks and attacks this one. And it's, again, so calm by Dubov. Svane takes this. In fact, here he takes the knight on c6. In fact, his attack is already so strong, he could simply have recaptured here. And, well, for example, if knight d5, if knight takes, bishop takes, and then threatening to exploit this pin with queen takes pawn, that can't be taken because of this. Or if after knight d5 the queen drops back, then just rook h6, just piling up on this pawn. It is already absolutely devastating. But instead, Dubov fairly quickly took on c6. Well, he liked the look of this, and actually he comes up with a brilliant idea. After pawn takes pawn, he just pushed his king in the corner, so he's ready to move this pawn, perhaps to f4, perhaps taking this one, without allowing queen takes pawn check. So tucking the king in the corner is just a very neat way of getting this attack going. And here he played f4, and actually taking the pawn is the strongest move. And e4. It's basically White hasn't given up any material here, and it's just a crushing position. That would have been the strongest, but f4, well, also pretty good. This bishop was doing nothing at the side of the board, so it steps back into play. And if pawn to e4, then that pawn could be taken. That's not so clear. So Dubov played rook e1 just to protect that one. And now knight d5. White has to react quickly before black gets a chance to play the rook across to h8. So the knight comes in attacking the queen and this one. So that has to be taken. And now rook h7 check. King goes back. And it's brutal stuff. Dubov just keeps going. And with this rook sacrifice, he brings his queen into the game, and already black is on the ropes, and if he steps the wrong way there could be a knockout. For example, if rook g7 blocking that one, then we take the knight with check. If the king comes here, then knight check, and boom! So after this one, queen g6 check, the king has to step to the side. Queen check, and now rook g7 is necessary. Bishop takes d5. Now this looks incredibly strong with all these. The king is getting caught in the crossfire. In fact, black can still hold on in this position with bishop f5. Svane, I think, played a very natural move, and that was king e8. He just decides to run. Bishop f5 would have been a better move, but that is absolutely not obvious to appreciate this. I won't go into detail. Let's look at the game, because king e8, it isn't losing, and it feels like a very natural move. But white still has a powerful attack. And here, Dubov, remember, he's a whole rook down, and he could have forced a draw with queen h3, queen h5 check, and so on. But he played on. Bishop e6. This is a really brave move, but, well, it's not only brave, he had to back it up with exact calculation. And here Svane had a choice. What should he do? Should he keep the extra rook and stagger up the board with the king? Or should he compromise and give up the queen? Well, if he gives up the queen, then he has a rook and two bishops for it. But White's attack is pretty strong. But that is really in the balance. It's absolutely not clear what should happen in that position, because that g-pawn is also potentially a bit of a problem for White. So that could go any way. But maybe it's just a bit easier for White to play than Black, because White has the queen and Black's king is pretty exposed. So let's go back, if I can get there. My mouse is not behaving today. That's better. So bishop e6 check. But Svane thinks, well, look, I'm a rook ahead. I can't see a checkmate. Listen, let's stagger up the board. Come on then, show me, show me. Well, he got shown. Queen f3. Bishop c4. Great move. If king takes, then here's a very nice move. Queen c6. So the point of this is actually to stop Black's king running back to b5 or d5. So now we can push the king onward. And in fact, it's one of those lovely situations where Black's king makes it all the way over to the other side of the board. And there we go, checkmate. Reminds me of Kasparov against Topalov. That's a fantastic game from Gary, where he managed to chase the king all the way to the other side of the board. So bishop takes c4 check. That can't be taken. King a5. So maybe Svane got to roughly this position and thought he was okay. But no. Queen d5 check. Great move. If c5, there's a cute checkmate coming. Here, king comes to a2, and now Black just doesn't have a good defense. So queen c6 check is threatened here, and if Black covers that like this, then knight e4. Really cute idea that this knight comes back from the other side of the board and delivers mate here. Oh, just fantastic stuff. Okay, let's go back a couple of moves. So queen d5 check. Bishop c5. Still not over. b4, right, that's understandable. Brings the king a little forward. Come to daddy. Here we go. And now queen g2. Threatening to switch across to c2. So that forces this one. So we don't want to check there yet because the king will go back. But watch this. Queen c6. The king comes forward. Now, this is an amazing move. It looks like we've got the king right where we want it. But be careful. So, for example, if the rook comes to e2, then Black will survive with bishop d2. And then queen b4 check. And basically, Black starts a counter-attack here. Well, I could go on, but basically, Black's king is okay here, and White's king is in massive trouble. So let's go back to this position. Here is the amazing idea, and I suspect that Svane probably overlooked this. Fantastic move. Bishop b3, absolutely brilliant. Threatening among others, but threatening queen a4 mate. If that is taken, then we check, and we checkmate on a2. So in this position, bishop d7 played, but now Dubov can push the king into that mating pattern. Watch it. Here we go. And the king is checkmated on a2. Absolutely brilliant. Now that could be a candidate for Game of the Year. I'll have a poll towards the end of December, and we can decide. But that is a definite candidate. Absolutely brilliant. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. And if you want to support the channel, help us keep the lights on, then do check out the links to PayPal or patreon.com/PowerPlayChess. Thanks for watching.